elected president. Then I was up in New York City and I was at this meeting, and this person said, what do you think about the new president? And I said, I don't know, I think it's going to be okay. And they said, yeah, but don't you think he's stupid? And I said, no. I said, I don't agree with him on everything, but I don't think he's stupid. And this person said to me, she said, but have you heard the way he talks? And I'm like, I didn't know what to say. And I just looked at her, and her face turned red. And she says, no, I didn't mean it like that. But it was too late, because she did mean it like that.
Hi, my name's Abby Herp, and from what I've heard about the stereotypes of the Appalachian people is that they're almost hillbilly-like. They don't wear shoes. It's a very poor part of Kentucky. They drink Mountain Dew, and a lot of them don't have any teeth because they've been decayed by that. It's just kind of redneck, pretty much. And then about how they talk, I've heard that it's just very Southern, like you can't even understand what they're saying because it's such Southern slang that it's almost like they're uneducated when they talk. And that's what I've heard about them.
What comes to my mind when I think about Appalachian people would be inbred, backwards, hillbilly, maybe dangerous. I think the lack of education make them dangerous.
The number one stereotype that comes to mind when people bring up the Appalachians is often their lack of diversity in genetics. This comes to my mind often because lack of diversity in genetics often causes early onsets of health issues.
There are many negative stereotypes about Appalachians, which include ignorance, they're hillbillies or rednecks, they have no teeth, they're all the same, they speak and dress and talk alike, they're uneducated, they speak incorrectly, they all live up in the mountains, they're very poor, it's a very poverty place, and they need help from the outside, they are incest, they have no community, they just live up in the backwoods, and that there's all white people live there, which there's many Native Americans and African Americans that live there, and that they're isolated. As you can see, many of these stereotypes are negative and very mean. Imagine being from Appalachia and knowing many people think this without even knowing any history, knowledge, or having any education on the area besides what they see on TV. These stereotypes are constantly used against them, and there needs to be a stop. Stereotypes are bad because they are cognitive shortcuts that allow our brain to make a snap judgment without having facts or educating ourselves. Our brain starts to believe that they are true, and then we apply them to real life, and which is harmful and hurtful to others. When stereotypes are negative, you are already judging the person based off the stereotype, which negatively affects the other person. They can affect the way people's careers are, how people learn, can cause inequality, and they are often just plain mean.
I remember going to Indiana as a young child and going into a store with my cousin and him introducing me as his cousin from Kentucky. And they were like, oh, well, say something for us. And it was like, I don't remember if I said hello or what I said, but it was like, you can tell she's from Kentucky. And I definitely, we have an accent, but it's something I like. It belongs to me, and I really like it. And I noticed that my kids, I listen to them sometimes, and I think, oh, man, they really have an accent. They have a good country accent. But that's the way I feel about it. I think it's a good country accent.
Language variation is the difference between how speakers use their language. This variation is demonstrated through linguistics terms of sound and structure. A common stereotype that Appalachians use is the term of they use a prefixes, such as a storm's a-comin' or she's a brewing a coffee, which in common Appalachian English you would hardly ever hear someone using something like that. Also, they are heavily stereotyped on their heavy country accents, which is seen as negative and uneducated. This is horrible and a terrible stereotype for them because they identify with this language and how they speak and their voice, and also many of them don't even really have a country accent, but since it's a stereotype, they just assume that they do. The perfective done is another language variation associated with the Appalachians. The perfective done, an example of this is she done gone to church, or we've done washed the dishes. And linguistics have found that this language variation was only used in the southern Smoky Mountains and found in the early 20th century. So, when it comes to information that you receive about a person, about a group of people or a place, you really should look up background information and do some digging of yourself before you store that information in your brain as a fact or true, because most information that you get is not true, and when you stereotype people into places, it often hurts other people and makes them possibly think negative about themselves, which is unfair. And Appalachians are labeled with these language variations and all these other negative stereotypes that just aren't necessarily true at all, and that affects them, and that's where they identify where they live and where they come from. And when people are downing it, how do you think that makes them feel? When, all you gotta do is take a few seconds to look up information and you can see that it's not true, and that many of them are educated and can speak well, and, they aren't poor, and they love where they live and where they come from, and they go to college, they have great education, and instead they're labeled. So all you gotta do is take a few seconds to look up some information about them.